I'm still, quite honestly, stunned from your reporting over the weekend and last week about the Raiders and Jimmy Garoppolo's foot. So is it really the case that they signed Garoppolo and he fails his physical and they delay the press conference because they got to figure out the lawyering to get the Raiders off the hook for his money if he can't answer the bell due to this foot surgery, and that's their quarterback plan going into 2023? Did I read all that right, Mike?
Yeah, you're right, and we need to back that up a step.
Please.
This is one of those things that can arise when you've got that 52-hour negotiating window, the legal tampering period, as some call it. Because what happens, Rich, the moment the clock strikes 12 Eastern on that Monday of the week of the first league year, which is looming at 4 p.m. Eastern that Wednesday, when it hits 12 on Monday, it's open season on free agents, and teams start calling agents, and people already have a pretty good idea of who's going to be interested in whom, but that's when it becomes fast and furious, and that's when you will have a team call an agent and say, we want to sign your guy, here's the contract, we need to know now, because if we don't get your guy, we're moving on to the next guy. And they strike deals fairly quickly. And on that day this year, Monday the 13th of March, the Raiders and Don Yee, who represents Jimmy Garoppolo, had a deal that was leaked to the media within 2 hours after the legal tampering period started. So I can only assume, based upon the application of common sense, of which I have at least a little bit, that because the Raiders had agreed to give an $11.25 million signing bonus that went away completely and got pushed into base salary that he'll never get if he doesn't pass the physical, I can only assume that the Raiders were led to believe that he was fine when they made that commitment. So he shows up a few days later for his physical. The media is assembled in the press room for the press conference, and eventually everybody gets sent home. And, of course, we get the nothing to see here from the team and from Garoppolo himself the next day when it was all said and done. He poo-pooed it. He said there was nothing, just some language we needed to work out. No, it was a significant situation where he failed the physical and they needed to rework the contract to the point where he got no money on the way through the door. And we know how important the signing bonus is. It's the most important piece. It's cash in hand. It's the money you get for putting your name on a piece of paper. He got zero for that. He has to get this foot healed. He had surgery on it. I don't know why he didn't have surgery back when it happened. He had to get surgery in March after he signed, and now we wait for him to rehab and recover. And because it's him, of all the starting quarterbacks in the NFL, the fact that it's the guy who's the most injury-prone makes it seem like a bigger deal. And then you got Tommy hovering, which adds a little spice to it. But it really is amazing. And it all happened because this all came to light last week. And, it was a slow weekend, and I started thinking about and reflecting on what had happened with Garoppolo back in March. It's like, well, I wonder if anybody's looked at the contract. So, I made a couple calls and pulled a couple strings and got the contract. It's like, oh, my God, this was a big deal, as evidenced by the fact that they're not paying him a signing bonus, and they have this full-page waiver that makes it clear when you look at the rest of the contract, if he doesn't pass a physical, he's never playing for that team, and he's never getting paid a penny.
So let's just take it again one step at a time here. So they say, come on in, Jimmy. They sign him. He's physical. He fails it. Everyone's just like, go back to your homes. That he failed his physical right before the press conference, or that came back from the doctor's office. I mean, is that really what happened on this front?
I mean, yeah, that's how it plays out because these deals get done. When you're talking about guys changing teams, you've got that 52-hour window where their agents can talk to the teams and negotiate. But you can't have visits. You can't even talk to the player. The Chiefs once lost a third-round pick plus for talking to Jeremy Maclin instead of his agent during that 52-hour window in one of the occasions where the NFL decided to enforce the tampering policy, but we know tampering happens all the time. Still, the last thing you can do is bring the guy in and give him a physical before you strike this deal. This is the problem. This is one of the flaws in this process. They strike the deal under the assumption that everything's fine. They bring him in to have the physical, the signing ceremony, the press conference. Everybody's happy. Everything's great. What's the delay? What's the holdup? What do you mean go home and come back tomorrow? And it was all about the failure of the physical and the heavy lifting they had to do to change the contract, to add the waiver, and to deal with the fact that the Raiders' position became, we're not giving this guy a penny. And And look, if this all does go sideways for the Raiders, think of what else they might have done if they had known. You get caught up in that frenzy. We got to get our guy. We want Jimmy Garoppolo. I mean, they could have kept Jarrett Stidham. They could have gone after Sam Darnold. They could have gone after Baker Mayfield. They could have done all sorts of stuff. But they committed to Garoppolo, and all the other ships sailed away.
So what does the contract say? What does the new language say that now that you've seen it?
Well, it's a full addendum, coincidentally and appropriately, addendum G to the Garoppolo contract. It basically says, in layman's terms, he has to pass a physical, specifically on the condition in his foot, in order to ever get paid. He can be cut if he fails that physical, and they specify the injury. It's not just a blanket. If you show up with an injury, we can not pay you. It has to be tied to that foot injury he suffered last year, and there's a window where it's still in existence. There are triggers on when it goes away. If he's on the 53-man roster, I think if he starts at least one game, I think that's when the waiver goes away. But they're protecting themselves against the possibility he's never going to be able to play for them and that he's never going to pass the physical. Now, once he comes back and plays, different story. But this is all, we're not doing anything until we know this guy is fully healed and fully recovered. That's when this contract kicks in, and he hasn't passed the physical yet. And look, we assume he will.
Yeah,
but,
sure.
I mean, how many times do we have supposedly successful surgery that goes sideways in the NFL? Every surgery is a success, and every player is well ahead of schedule on rehab until he's not. So it's just something to keep an eye on. And the fact that it's Garoppolo, I think, just gives it the extra intrigue.
Catch the Rich Eisen Show every single day on the Roku channel, 12 to 3 Eastern, for free.